Deborah, Jeremy, please introduce yourselves and tell us about your backgrounds, and then I'll start asking questions.
Okay, so I'm song copyright, this one's recording copyright. I think when we speak, we're focusing on those areas. Artist, music publisher, songwriter. His wife writes all of the Bon Bon Vivant songs, and I represent the songwriter. But so when we're speaking, it's mostly me publishing, and Jeremy will talk about distribution and artist things. So my name is Deborah Evans. I've been here for about 20 years as a music publisher. I have some local artists. I have Sizzle, Bounce Artist. I have Bon Bon Vivant. Okay. I have Voice Monet. I have Latranium, young pop guy. Anyway, so some local stuff, but I started out bringing some rap and hip hop music that I represented in the New York area, and I still have those catalogs. But for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been able to very fortunately concentrate on local songwriters and musicians, which is important to me. So so that's mostly what I've been doing as a music publisher. I also clear music for film and TV, synchronization licensing projects. I clear artworks that have music for the Museum of Modern Art, things like that. That's sort of an aside. But mostly I'm a music publisher, and I started out as I have a master's degree in harpsichord playing. So I'm a musician. Yeah.
Incredible musician. Yeah.
Yeah. I played for Solange's wedding. Can
Oh,
I
you
just
did?
throw that out there? Okay, great.
Wow.
I just do that. I played it. Okay, that's not important. It was cool. She was lovely. So performance background and teaching piano background, and all of the under stuff that helps me relate to songwriters and musicians immediately very well. And then I have the administrative side that I've learned just by practice, starting off at a small publishing company in New York in 1998. And from there, I've moved around and finally forming my own company about 20 years ago. And which is the best because I get to choose who I want to work with. And the music that's important to me.
That's great. Thank you, Deborah.
And then I'm Jeremy Kelley. I play in a band called Bon Bon Vivant that's local here. We tour nationally a little bit, and my wife is a songwriter, and I end up producing all of the songs that she writes. And we're kind of a songwriter team. And we got into this infernal business when we met 15, 20 years ago, and have been kind of discovering it curiously ever since. And so I think I'm the street version of, we've learned some things over the years.
The name of your band.
Bon Bon Vivant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to see them. Great. Well,
Jazz Fest.
yeah. What day are you playing at Jazz Fest?
We're doing May 2nd.
May 2nd?
Yeah.
Okay. Which stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Lanyap this year.
Okay, see, this,
She knows.
yeah, she's your publisher.
She knows
So-
so much about us.
Yeah, well, that's her job, right? And that's what you're gonna get into. So I wanted to ask, what is publishing? Because, publishing is a term it's kind of like producer, right? Like it's not as, I think producer might be the most overused term in the English dictionary, but publishing, is a little vague too. And you hear it being referred to like, to publish something is a verb, right? And then you hear it referred to as a noun, as publishing, like an interest. So Deborah, since you're the expert, will you explain the difference between using the term publishing as a noun and like publishing, what it means to publish something?
Right, so without being legal, because I'm not a lawyer, fixed and tangible medium. So when something is published, it becomes a thing that's tangible. So that's the noun. And that's a piece of written music, or it's a download, something fixed onto a server is published. So once it's published, it's owned by whoever's basically paid for the recording of that, or paid for the songwriting. So, so publishing, generally people don't know that there are songwriters behind hits. Katy Perry, I think, has written some of her. Barbra Streisand did not write any of her music. Elvis did not write any of his music. So he had artists, but songwriters underneath. So they own the copyright into the song itself, but that's a separate copyright. So in publishing, I focus on protecting the song copyright. The Copyright Office is the best resource. It's one of my resources on the page I gave to you. Lots of information. You don't have to go to the Copyright Office to copyright your song, because once it's in that fixed and tangible medium, it's yours and you own it.
What is your day-to-day role as a publisher?
Administrative.
Because you said you have all these people, what does that mean? So you have contracts with
Yes.
Bon Bon Vivant and these other artists?
Yeah, I represent about 3 or 4 artists. Actually, I have about 10 songwriters, but representing the songwriter means I collect money from performance royalties from ASCAP and BMI. As the administrative publisher, I don't own the copyrights, so I administer the copyrights. I don't own them. I don't want to own them. I have administration deals with my songwriters, whereby I take a commission on what comes in. So I have worldwide deals with publishers around the world who collect on my behalf. So if he went to France, for example, Hassizel is going to Paris this summer, my bounce artist, and I'm connecting him with my French sub-publisher, because he's going to get in Europe, the performance royalties are much better, yes. Much more taken care of.
So what will that sub-publisher do on his behalf?
Right. They will, my job as US copyrights is to make sure the registrations are in place here in the US, because I'm representing a US writer. The sub-publisher will take those ASCAP, or in Hassan's case, BMI, and make sure the counterpart, which is SACEM, one of the performing rights organizations, or GAMA, or any of the
Other European.
Yeah, the pros that attract it.
performance rights organizations.
yeah, so they make sure the registrations coincide, PRS in the UK. And my sub-publishers, which are small companies like me, collect the royalties from SACEM, PRS, GAMA.
Now, does the artist have to have a publisher in order to collect royalties in Europe?
No, ASCAP and BMI do send out foreign distribution. If you have releases in a specific territory, it's really best to find somebody there to make sure it happens for you. So no, you don't. But on the other hand, I don't think ASCAP and BMI fully collect for foreign.
It's your opportunity to plug yourself.
Yeah.
So, and I can do that.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that for
What does
you.
that translate to mailbox money for you?
So,
What's the distinction between going through someone like Deborah and doing it yourself?
yeah, with us, if I were to like frame it really simply, is she's a watchdog for us to make sure that we're collecting what we need or what we deserve, or also she has an entire Rolodex of people that can help us expand how we make more money. People we wouldn't know who to call, groups that are constantly licensing songs for film and TV, all kinds of relationships that she has that as a New Orleans street musician, I wouldn't know any of those people or how to contact them. So she's making sure that we collect from YouTube and we're collecting from, you know, Spotify and all of the tiny little pennies that they allow us for our intellectual property. And it does add up over time. And these become meaningful things as you build it. And having someone to do, just make sure that ASCAP and BMI is updated properly. So you do have the ownership that you need.
Gatekeeper, I think.
A gatekeeper, yeah, and a well-needed one, because we're busy writing and playing. And she knows a lot more about the nuance of how those things fit together than you would as an artist. It just, you know, you're making t-shirts and writing choruses. And she's gonna know how to navigate those things, make sure you're filling out all the paperwork properly, or that you're you know, you're reminding us to register songs and make sure we get them up into where they need to go to be tracked. Yeah,
I handle the
yeah,
registration.
a lot of administrative stuff that,
Yeah, and you don't have time necessarily to do it because if you're an artist, that's what you're doing, so. Back end.
question.
Yeah, so where does the Writers Guild fit in with this?
The Writers Guild, the Writers Guild is.
Oh, Songwriters Guild?
I mean, if you publishing, right?
Yeah, the Songwriters Guild collects, are you a member of the SGA?
No, I'm just.
Okay,
no.
because they collect songwriter royalties, so they're an older organization based in Hoboken, I think. They specifically deal with the writer half of a song, SGA.
I just wanted to share it for people who
Right.
are aware of the.
And we will,
Yeah.
we will definitely take, we're gonna have a lot of time for questions and answers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like probably the vast majority, so not to worry, but we will address all of this.
Okay, gotcha.
But Jeremy, would you mind walking me through like a basic sale, like, so a typical transaction, when someone buys your record?
I mean, I'm still surprised how much vinyl and CDs we sell on the road. Those things don't really get ordered from websites or digitally anymore, but people that you see in front of you that, hey, you have some kind of visceral reaction with each other. They want to come up and buy what you have. And so there's one large revenue stream is CDs and merch and stickers and glasses and hats and lunch boxes and all the things that you feel comfortable branding as yourself. And one of the things we did early on, we went on tour with, you know, CDs and stickers and just went out. Realized that because my wife is an artist, also, we figured out how to make other interesting things that align with who we were and what our music sounds like and the things that we love. An example of that is, and then you can redirect me into
I don't know.
a subject for sure, but she makes handmade parasols, and at festivals, we can't sell enough of them. And we can't raise the price enough.
Beautiful.
They are beautiful. She makes them all by hand on the road, and it's fun. And the other thing we found was like little heart-shaped sunglasses that kind of go with our bon vivant kind of, I don't know, the way what we're trying to push out into the world. Yeah. And so we ended up creating a merch table that has a lot of fun stuff attached to it, and realized that people really enjoy coming to the merch table to see all the stuff. But then you end up talking to them about the music, you get interesting feedback from these people. They sign up for your mailing list, you create kind of a connection with all these folks. So that sale, then we collect all these dollars, credit cards and Venmo and cash. And then, you know, deal with it. It becomes like the small business part where, and is this what you're getting at? Where
You keep going.
we
Yes, please.
then we, you know, divide that amongst the players that play in the band, pay off any expenses, and figure out what's left over to kind of reinvest in the band. And you start to realize, I think, especially as a live performer, and that's your focus, if that's your focus, is you have a small business.
Mhm.
And you have a small business that you have a artistic message that you'd like to express to people, and that's the most meaningful part of it. And then you have all of the things that they like to buy from you because they want to support that message. And sometimes we found that, like my wife and I this summer, we're laughing about it. We're like, I think we're a t-shirt company. in real life. I mean, we're giving away lots of music. There's music all over. Most people are streaming it. We sell a lot of vinyl. But when we looked at the numbers at the end of a 4-month tour, like, oh, wow, this year we became a t-shirt company. Everybody liked the t-shirt design. And so she went like, oh, okay, how can we make more interesting t-shirt designs that are kind of like this so that when we go back next summer, they'll all want to buy the next version of those things. And it bent us around a little bit initially, the commercialization aspect of our art. And it took us a little while to kind of realize that the audience really loves you finding inventive ways to express yourself and have things for sale, and the cool things that you like, they want to be a part of those things too. So
Yeah, that's
I
great.
ran a little bit,
But I'm a little tickled, that, you know, I asked about the sale of the record and you went straight into merch, and that's very telling, you know.
yeah, there's no money in
Because that's where you're making,
records.
that's where you're making the
Because
money.
that's where you're making your money.
Yeah.
is
So,
merch.
yeah, that's where you're making the
Yeah.
money. So that's the takeaway
Yeah.
from your answer. But
Good time to bring up Sound Exchange. If you're a featured artist on somebody else's recording, very important, you are getting part of that recording. And register for Sound Exchange, it's artist royalties, digital only, so it started just for digital royalties, but it's for artists, it's not publishing royalties, and if you're a featured artist,
for recording artists,
recording
Recording,
artists,
yeah.
yeah,
just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But getting those recordings into the Sound Exchange system will yield some money.
The much greater detail about Sound Exchange. We kind of jumped into the performance rights organizations, but we didn't really explain what a performance rights organization is. So we talk about BMI and ASCAP. What is the role of a performance rights organization? And then what is the difference between a song performance rights organization versus Sound Exchange that collects on behalf of the recordings? And their revenue points, right?
How many are members of ASCAP or BMI or CSAC?
Yay!
Okay, good. Are your members as writers? Are you also members as publishers? Do that, because each song is half writer share and half 50% writer share, 50% publisher share. So set up an LLC, a DBA, you can tie it to your social security number. If you don't want to set up an LLC and go that far, set up a separate company with your society. You can't move societies. It's very hard to move from ASCAP to BMI, and so forth. But make sure you have a publishing company, because that way you're making sure you're getting half of the income. Basically, you get 2 checks. You get a writer check and a publisher check. So
Okay,
that's the like fundamental thing that.
What
that
happens to that money
everybody's-
if there's no publisher registered? Like, is it
It's,
collected?
it sits there. It
Well-
actually might not go to them.
Unless they claim it, because a songwriter can claim the publishing share.
Well, right.
So let's make sure that they know that, because you don't have to have a publisher. You don't have to, you can collect what the publishing interest would be as a songwriter. You have
Well,
the
you
option
are
to
a
do that.
publisher as a songwriter. You're both.
You are.
Because you own both sides.
But you don't have to create a separate entity.
Right.
To collect your full interest in the broadcast royalties. So some people do, and we're gonna get into that. Some people have a separate publishing company that they created, and I think that's in large amount due to the fact that that was just standard practice for a long time. And there are advantages to doing that, but you're not missing out on public performance royalties.
Yeah.
If you as a songwriter are collecting your publishing share, and you basically kind of have to, unless you just give it to someone else, because you can't register your songs if you don't designate the full percentage of the interest. So if you're as long as you are collecting on both sides of of those interests, then you're collecting everything that, you're not missing out on it. So she's right, you certainly can register a publishing company, but you just don't have to.
I always advise, but,
So that's what I
but yeah,
wanted to
Ashley's
know.
right, you don't have to, it's actually not, it's not gonna sit there, I mean, it will go to you. So-
But I want to know, because this is what you do. And it always interests me, when people go straight to, form a publishing company, right? And I want to know, what do you think the benefits are? And not just with respect to, the performance rights organizations, but to operating, a business entity that's separate from the person. So when you say form a publishing company, do you mean form an LLC? Or do you mean just list a publishing company that's independent from yourself with the performance rights organizations?
Well,
Or both?
either, but the advantage is that if you have an administrator who's not yourself, they're gonna be the ones to collect money worldwide, from sources that you might not know about. So that's the basic advantage, but otherwise you're doing a lot of that stuff, the registrations yourself, you're just a lot of the song file, song trust, music reports, contracts with different things. The main advantage is that an administrative publisher knows how to collect from the different sources and make it more
Right.
streamlined. You don't have to have a publishing company, but you already have one in the sense that your copyright is split 50 writer share, 50 publisher share.
So, Jeremy, I noticed when I was cyber stalking the band earlier that
What'd I do?
when I went on your ASCAP site, and that's how I know that your wife writes most of the music.
Mhm.
I noticed that she collects her songwriter interest, but then there's an LLC that's not you, that collects the publishing interest.
The original
It's-
publisher.
The original publisher, right? So instead of her collecting all of it, they have it split up so that she has it split up, so she's collecting the songwriting interest and she's not collecting the publishing interest. She has another entity that's doing that. And I didn't know before today that is basically the band's LLC. So tell us about that. How is your LLC organized?
So we've got,
And why do you have it?
we have two.
Oh, you have two.
Yeah, well, Bon Bon Vivant LLC is like the performance group, so that's our band with the players that are attached to that band.
And what does it do?
Right now, they don't have, none of the other players right now have ownership in that LLC. We used to have some old owners that we bought out over time
Right.
because they moved on to other things and we just haven't added anyone else to it. But that, if you think about it as an entity, I guess, and feel free to kind of push me in a direction that you're
I don't know
going.
what you're doing.
That is a entity that owns a van, has rehearsal space, owns instruments, recording stuff, goes out on the road, travels around and plays music. And then Heroic Doses LLC is the publishing company we
That's the
pay.
one I saw on ASCAP.
And-
It's like, what's heroic doses?
Yeah, and that owns music and intellectual property. So they're kind of, to Abby and I, they're kind of two different businesses. There's like stuff that gets made and created or incepted out of nothing. And then there's the group that goes out and proliferates that and does stuff and plays music and gets into car accidents and, like has fun and drinks too much. And there's a lot of risk in the band portion of these things. Like, that owns physical things and the publishing company owns all the intellectual property of these things. And the way we organized it, and I don't know if it's unnecessary, but the publishing company and the writer, my wife and us as a publishing company, kind of lease our songs to the band, which creates some tax stuff that's helpful for us, but also
What do you
protects.
mean by lease your songs to the band?
So we have an agreement between the two LLCs that Bon Bon Vivant has the ability to use all the songs that Heroic Doses allows. So there's like an agreement between me and my wife and these two entities. The reason that we liked that is because if someone gets mad at Bon Bon Vivant, the band, they can't really sue for intellectual property stuff, and we can keep these two ideas separate.
Right.
I'm not a lawyer.
No, you're doing good.
Okay. And keeping these separate also allows us, like, do we want to license songs to other people? Does my bass player have part of the income from a song that my wife wrote that we license to someone else, and that becomes some kind of usable song, and it starts generating real dollars?
Bingo, because that's her song and it's the LLC song.
Right.
It's not the band's song.
It's not the band's
So
song.
while she may be, forfeiting her mechanical royalty when there's a record sale, she's making sure that, or you all are making sure that the interest in the song is still controlled by her and not the band, so that when she goes to license that song for
Yeah.
for synchronization license, for television or film, or for any other purpose, she or the LLC will collect the income for that.
Right.
And that's a different revenue stream from the transaction, from the sale, the record sale that I was talking about.
Right.
Which is of course separate from the merchandise and,
Right.
and separate from the performance rights income as well.
Yeah.
And so when you get into licensing and other third-party transactions, that's a whole different revenue source. And in that situation, the band would not collect. She would collect, or the LLC would collect,
Yeah.
unless the band owns a recording that is also licensed.
Right.
Because in this situation, let's say that what is wrong with me? Sorry, a music supervisor. That's what I was looking for. Let's say that a music supervisor approaches Abigail, wants to use one of Bon Bon Vivant's songs, but wants to have someone else record it.
Sure.
And that happens, and it sometimes causes strife, right?
For sure.
Because she's getting the money and the rest of the band's not getting anything. Because they own the recording, but she owns the song. And therefore, they're not seeing any income from that. Because the music supervisor is, for whatever reason, either wants a different kind of sound. Often is the case
It's also
that
cheaper.
budgeting,
Yeah, advertising agencies are always re-recording
always
with their
re-recording.
in-house musicians.
Mhm.
And sometimes the recordings are just as good, but
Yeah,
they don't necessarily have the money to pay for, the James Brown recording.
right, because generally speaking, in that sort of situation, the owner of the recording and the owner of the song, if they have someone like Deborah or me negotiating this, would get paid the same.
Equal.
Yeah.
Most favored nations.
That's what it's called.
And it puts you as an artist in a really interesting position, right? Because there are people that are working really hard for you and with you. And then there's income streams that they might not be attached to necessarily. And we've decided that we share those income streams with the players that are playing with us. Those guys are leaving their houses for 4 months at a time and slugging gear around and driving 8 hours and working really hard, recording stuff and giving us their care and time and attention. And they're like family to us. But you have to get really good at being okay talking about money. And in a creative group, that's weird. I mean, it's strange to go to your bass player and go, so legally, man, you didn't write any kind of a hook or a lyric or a melody that gives you income access. So you actually don't own any of this, even though you were in the room when we wrote it and you were a part, you're attached to this, but because you're playing bass lines, which are not, and again, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but you don't own those things. Technically, that person wouldn't have ownership in the song. And so you have to decide, do you add each person individually and give them some ownership so that they can collect it? Or do you have an arrangement with them that you have full control, you collect all the money, but you're willing to distribute that to them? There's all of these arrangements that you can have with the people that you're working with. And it's really important to learn how to talk to them and you about that. And it has to be separated, I think, from an emotional conversation of like, do you care about this? Yes, we're all working hard. Yes, we're all starving a little bit. Yes, we're all fighting for something. But those relationships kind of need to be clear.
With the song, it's called a song split sheet, and
Yeah.
there are definitely templates that are great. It just get things signed, you know, you've probably all heard this 'cause for a while, but
Don't
get signatures before the recording happens.
Or have it, yeah.
You know, I represent Redman, Reggie Noble, and we're looking at something with Tupac where Reggie was in the studio and he actually laid down a verse on a Tupac song, and he legitimately has some claim to it. And we even have like some videos and stuff, but to go back and try to get that claim,
It'd be a nightmare.
very
To
hard.
litigate
Yeah.
for it.
And that's even with you being an administrator, so
Yeah, yeah. and
that's how tricky that can be,
I would not want to be a lawyer, I'm sorry.
right?
Yeah, and then we've had a bass player come in with a killing bass line that it became a hook of the song. And so then you kind of you have to, you start looking at split sheets and you go like, okay, is that 10%? Is it 20%? And now you're talking about like how meaningful their contribution is. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But learning to have those kind of dialogues with people that you're working with, I think is super important.
Yeah,
And it's weird.
I did mechanical licensing for Cash Money Records for about 10 years under the Universal
Oh.
Records umbrella, and some of the contracts, the Wayne contracts with just all the different, and it really came down to the split sheet back with the,
Sure.
the Hot Boys and just the early stuff in Juvenile, just people coming back, saying, yeah, I was in the studio but there wasn't anything signed, and I've had to deal with a lot of that, so that's all I have to say. Just get things in writing as best as you can, and email counts, text counts, that
Yeah.
as writing.
So you always want to make sure that whatever interests, like they said, whatever interests you have are
Fleshed out.
documented.
Clear, yeah.
And because it is so much harder to do it later. And it is tricky to do it, and you might not agree on what those interests are. And you're going to be the people, if you came to me and asked me, and I've had artists do this, what the splits should be, I'm not a musicologist. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. You don't want someone like me making that decision. You are gonna know what that is, and unless and until you all can agree, then you're in a vulnerable situation because you can't really authorize legally the exploitation of the works.
Well, in rap and hip hop, it's more formulaic because it's 50% producer, 50% artist.
Well,
Generally,
that's
but that's rap
that's
and
a-
hip hop,
that's a
but that's a
thing.
starting point.
right, and that's also like, I mean, constantly evolving. Yeah, because I've actually, most of my contracts are very different, but you can agree on, to my question to Jeremy earlier on, what their arrangement was, like when they sell a record, because when you said that your wife as the songwriter, respects that, your band, the whole band is really putting in the effort, and ultimately, the reason why her song is being listened to and then and available for transaction, right? Because there's not a way, it's not like she's putting out sheet music, right?
Right.
And people aren't using sheet music to learn about what kind of music they like anyway. I mean, there are, but I don't know who they are, I'm sure that there are some classical composers out there somewhere that do that, but I don't know. I've never had a music supervisor tell me that that's how they engage music. So when you said that she appreciates that, I'm curious, does that mean if she licenses one of her songs in a way that the band doesn't see any revenue, do you have an arrangement where she splits that among the band, or does that just vary? My second question, my follow-up question was going to be, and I wanted to ask you earlier, is whether the band has a formal operating agreement.
We do. Because we have more side folks just right now than we're auditioning bass players now. That operation agreement's operational agreement's a little thinner than it used to be. Right now, we have like a work for hire agreement with a couple of people that play with us.
That's easy.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because you're not as, they're not as committed based on their time. They're not committing completely to me all the time, so, you
Right.
know, we have a different
Work for
arrangement.
hire, flat fee.
Yeah.
For service.
Yeah.
You all probably know that.
Yeah. But, with
And
the,
it's where they're not, if you sign a work for hire, you
You don't
don't
own
own an
it.
interest in the copyright. That's what that, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what he's saying is that for some of the band members that, or some of the people who are performing with the rest of the band, that they are under work for hire, so that means that they're not getting paid for record sales or song
Back end.
sales.
right.
But they are getting, I assume they're getting paid for performing, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And we share and merch with all the people that are performing with us. We're pretty egalitarian and like socialist when it comes to sharing. We just kind of feel like if you don't invest in those folks, that you don't have loyalty with those folks, and they, you know, like there's creative withholding, and you know, people start to talk, like get upset about money, and it destabilizes the band. We found that when we were too careful or too maybe strict about how things get cut up, it just made everything a little less stable. And so we've even licensed songs to film and TV and just shared in that income with the band. Those guys are, you know, working their tails off with us. And so, yeah, I think finding a reasonable way to maintain control of your own intellectual property and make sure that you have the ability to make all the decisions and you don't have to ask 9 people if someone can license a song is important organizationally, but then, you know, finding a way to share with the people that are working with you is important.
Right. So when you sell your merchandise, I assume beyond the homemade parasols, which now I want one, that you have your brand that Bon Bon Vivant is actually, which is a trademark.
Right.
That's included in some of that merch. And so that brand is also intellectual property. So I'm curious, and it's probably making more than the copyright at this point, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, when someone leaves your band, how does that work with the merchandise? Do you all have in your agreement, do you have it worked out so that the majority of the band owns the mark as long as they're performing, or do you have it, is it such that one person owns the mark? Like, what's the arrangement?
Yeah, the Bon Bon Vivant LLC owns the mark,
Okay,
and that's right now just Abby and I.
okay,
But we had to, at one point, pretty young in the band, we added all the band members to the LLC. And as they moved and changed, and we had to figure out an arrangement with them, because, you know, unless lightning strikes in a wonderful way for you, or you're an incredible business person, this can be a lean business. And so you can't just slice off 10% for someone who's no longer active
right,
in the business. The money's not there. You need that 10% for the next person that's going to come fill that slot, right? So we had to go through and make, you know, we had one band member have some kids and move to Arizona, and he just got tired of touring and he wanted to, you know, he became an accountant. And so you have to sit down and talk with these people about how they can exit, and you know, try to be reasonable. And so now we do maintain ownership and control of everything, so that as people come and go, we've got the ability to have a dialogue about it.
that's good.
Yeah.
So you're able to have control, but with greater flexibility, which is what empowers you to be able to decide to cut to split up the dividends from the trademark among the members. Because you could have that, or you could, without an agreement otherwise, just decide to take all the merch yourself.
Yeah.
Which would hopefully result in a band breakup. But, you know, people done it, you know, you would be the first, right?
Sure.
And so that's what I mean by being able to contract. It doesn't mean it matters who owns the rights, but you could always contract to split the revenue, whether or not, you know,
Rights to
whether or not
income
you
versus
share
rights
the
to
actual
decisions.
ownership.
Right.
I mean, in fact, you know, I mean, as you all are probably aware, because ownership doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily translate to all the dollars, right? Like it's not necessarily correlative. So like when a lot of the major labels, for instance, own the exclusive rights to the artists' copyrights, but the artists, some of those artists are still getting paid. I mean, before Taylor Swift went to war over her copyright, she was making major buck, right? When she was a household name, which is why she had the leverage to be able to negotiate to get her rights back.
Scooter.
Yeah, but you know, she went many years without owning those rights and was still getting paid, still a household name. So just because you don't own something doesn't mean you can't, you know, necessarily earn revenue from it.
Yeah.
But it does translate to control. though.
Yeah.
And that's important. Because especially when, you know, you're in situations where you do have a band and like you said, someone gets married, moves out of state. Often is the case, someone dies, you know.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with the states, and when you're talking about all of the revenue points that we've been discussing today and all the parties involved, then, you know, that's when it's starting, you know, we're starting to realize that you want a Deborah around, right? To administer all of that, because I mean, that works my brain it works out my brain just thinking about that scenario, right? So, and I do this all the time. And it's still a headache. So
One of the things that was really hard about figuring out an operational agreement or how we were gonna kind of structure all this stuff is you look for a template, right? It's easy to go like, what are the rules? How does this work?
mhm,
And then I think what we found at some point, you just sit down with the people you're working with and you iron those things out and what feels fair for everybody in some way, shape, or form, and go through the emotional turbulence of like walking through it. Like I said, we've had some meaningful contributions to songs where, you know, Abby will write a song and the piano player comes up with a hook that's crazy good for it, which he should be compensated for and rewarded for.
mhm.
And then figuring out like, okay, we feel like that's a 20%, you know, you kind of sit down with them and figure that out. And so that's where we'll add stuff to Q sheets and split sheets.
I just want to throw in something really important, and that's just data. Your metadata, your song titles, your AKAs. Put as accurate information into the registrations or anything you're filling out as possible. As some systems don't use the a and or the before the title, some do. Disco, does anybody use Disco? It's an Australian company as a database. It's wonderful. All of the music supervisors use it to send out music. The population of data can come from your Apple, from your iTunes songs into Disco. It's called Disco, DISCO, AU, Australia. And their prices have just dropped. I was gonna try to put up sort of price listing on things like this. And if you want to email me, I'll get you some general ideas of some of these costs. But these are just things that you can do on your own just to make sure your information is as accurate as possible, because you could be, if you go to YouTube and you could be not earning money on a song because the title's wrong.
So what does Disco do?
It's a database, organizational database for music, for recordings. And it's also a resource for music supervisors to find things by genre.
To listen.
Yeah.
To listen to music.
To listen to
That's
music,
why
yeah.
that's why we got involved with Disco.
Yeah,
We had a number
I
of,
made him do it.
Yeah.
But it's great.
yeah,
right?
yeah, we had a number of music
Disco.
supervisors that said
Awesome.
like, this is an easy way for us to find music. And so then you put your lyrics in there, all of your, you know, music and,
Yeah.
and then add kind of genre specific things or descriptor factors. So if there's a music soup looking for a specific kind of tune, it'll pull that up in a database.
Yeah, and I've been following them since the beginning, because I don't like to advocate for any of these companies or any of these systems that haven't stuck around, but Disco is the best. Yeah, DistroKid for distribution seems to be the best. This is what I've learned, you know, as a music publisher, the things that kind of rise to the surface, but Disco is great.
This goes, and do they organize the data?
Yeah. Oh, that's what it is. It's more-
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah, oh,
What,
yeah.
tell me what it is. Stop selling it. Tell me what it
Yeah.
is.
Anyway, so if you're talking to a music supervisor that like is working with horror movies for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you start a relationship, then you can go like, okay, here's all of our dark stuff and just send them,
Yeah.
you know, here's all of our stuff with weird violence. So someone's a song that someone can get murdered to or whatever, you know, like however that works in the film scene.
Going a different direction. Okay.
But it allows you to be genre specific or just send them the stuff that you know they'll like rather than just like dumping songs on people that they're not gonna listen to because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is
Specific with
waste a
everybody you're
music
dealing with.
supervisor's time.
Yeah,
because
they just won't pay
come to you
attention.
again.
Yeah, so if you can kind of figure out what
Very
those
specific.
people like and then send them libraries that are just that stuff.
Right. Well, that's good. I hope you all are taking notes on that.
Mhm.
So there was something that you said that triggered me that I wanted to ask a question, but then I started talking about disco and I didn't write it down. That's what I'm doing, which is on me, but it will come back. It will come back as you all are asking questions. Because it needs to, because I was thinking about another revenue stream, but while I'm thinking about something else in my head now, you mentioned YouTube, you alluded to YouTube briefly. So that's, as you all know, just another source of revenue. And that's because it's advertising, right? This isn't, you're not getting public performance income from YouTube for reasons that are too lengthy to get into in this discussion, which is, it's crazy, but you're not, you know, obviously not selling anything. There's no transaction there when it comes to your recordings or your songs. Unless you're licensing to a sync to someone or something along those lines. But that ad revenue is, you know,
Can be significant.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
do
definitely.
you all use YouTube for
Oh, God. yeah.
revenue
My-
purposes?
My bounce artist, I think most of our revenue for his music comes from his plays and his views of his videos and yeah, it's great. So I have a service that does this for me and also for other people.
What do
And
you-
I've been with them.
What's the service do?
Well, they're called Exploration IO. No, not, they're just great. But they track, place, of your songs. So I contract with them for my catalog. They track plays of and views of songs. So that's why the importance of information, getting all that correct.
So they don't
We get-
rely on the data that YouTube provides?
No, well, no, because they'll fix it. They'll correct it. They will.
What will they correct? What are they correcting? What's the benefit?
Well, they would add, release date maybe, things that aren't there that they can come to me to add, because that makes a difference. On number of plays and number of views, so they'll add, they're
Tracking
data
ad revenue.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's ad revenue.
It's ad
And
revenue.
which initially it's what seemed like pennies for my bounce artist, but over the years, we get monthly decent amounts for the views of his videos, and it's great. And it's almost more than any of the mechanical income from his record sales. So for him, he's a very visual guy. He's a bounce artist, so you know, that's his thing. So of course, so that's really significant. We get some for you, not as much, you know.
It's something we're growing
it's-
out. I had a friend call and say that his YouTube revenue started going up quite a bit. And we were just chatting about it and I was asking what he was doing and he started putting the entire album on a YouTube video. So you'd take the whole album, upload it, and then put, you know, short form videos about the band, maybe them on the road and all kinds of fun stuff to watch. And he said his audience was using it as like Spotify for him. So they would just go to YouTube and press play and it would play the
Go to
whole album.
next, Yeah.
And then it would also have, you know, stuff there, but they're playing ads regularly too.
Right, so each
So-
delay generates income.
So yeah, and so as people are just like checking out his music, every once in a while a commercial comes on, but it paid more than Spotify for him by a long shot. And so he kind of figured out how to get his audience to start listening to him there. And yeah, it worked well for him.
So you all have YouTube accounts, I assume? Everyone has a YouTube account with me.
You know,
I do for the organization. I'm old. But are there any other revenue sources that are obvious that we haven't talked about?
So we did sync, mechanical, performance, right? We didn't talk much about sync.
Why don't you do that since what is this? What is a
Okay.
synchronization license?
Okay, so you probably, most of you know this, but synchronization is when a music is tied to a visual image. Period. So film, TV uses with music underneath. Payment has to go to both the record label if the master recording is being used and to the publisher and songwriter because the song is being used. So there's if you own the song and the recording, there's two revenue streams there with the synchronization. These are negotiated licenses in the United States. So kind of just knowing general, this is where this can come in. I'm really, this is absolutely the best book. Contracts, explaining everything. It's the Braybeck's book, Jeff and Todd Braybeck. They are just veterans. They come here to New Orleans for cutting edge every summer. And very, very user friendly. It's a wonderful source to understand some of these terms that you might not know, and also a license template. So, and fees. So basic synchronization license fee, film festival, $1,000 per side, $1,000 for the label and $1,000 for the publishing. These are the kinds of things that a publisher knows about. This book, if you don't have an administrative publisher, this book will help you.
But
But this is
every synchronization license is negotiable.
Yeah, they're all negotiable.
I mean, there's, there's
There's set fees though too. I mean, there's, you can't.
there's not set fees. You can do it for
Well, there's
zero,
market.
but
Yeah.
don't do that. Yes,
No.
you can. But there are best practices.
Yes,
Yeah.
best practices.
And that's what
Kinda
we're
like
talking about. Yeah.
industry standard,
Yeah,
Right,
usual.
right. But yeah, so definitely, and that is a
so
great resource.
TV, film.
And you can always use with the synchronization license, what Deborah is talking about is you can, all the usages, the more usages that you allow. So if a film producer wants to license your music and only seeks the use of it for a film festival or for, a limited film festivals, documentary film festivals, right? Then that does not give them the right to use your music in the same film for streaming, right?
Right.
They would have to get an independent
It's like a one-time specific use.
license for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can license your music for, what we call all-in usages. So that would be for any and all media, right? Now in
I'll
a
mean
graphics
excluding
development,
theatrical or including or excluding theatrical.
right?
Big fees, and sometimes the basic rule of thumb is if you can do something called a step deal, which is still done, film festival, and then options for more media. If Hulu picks up the show or Amazon, then $20,000 may come
That's
in.
more income.
But that's more income, so you can set up a license that way. But the license templates are pretty available on the internet. You can do it yourself.
But I don't recommend you do it yourself,
No.
especially
No,
when
it
you have
looks like-
access to a free lawyer.
Yeah, and
Because you might
negotiating
not
fees.
understand what that license says,
Yeah,
so that's important.
but you can get an idea
No.
of how to go about it, and
Right.
what generally it is, but as far as negotiating fees, I know what the fees are. She knows how to drop contracts, so-
Always call the free lawyer.
Yes.
Always call
Don't call me all the time, but call me.
But yeah, synchronization is a pretty good source of income. It depends on the different catalogs I have too. I have an old jazz catalog that depends on what shows is coming up. Reservoir Dogs or Reservation Dogs loves my Link Ray guitar stuff from the 50s, it just depends on what's going on.
Well, and that's all about your network too,
Yeah.
because networking is, I mean, again, we're talking about, your business, your music as your business, and it is a business, as we've been discussing, and, I mean, it's just another thing to add to your many roles and many hats that you already have to wear, but, the more expansive your network, typically, I mean, it's like casting a wider net, right? The more opportunity that, is available, and so if a music supervisor, wants to license your work and likes your catalog and you're easy to deal with, then you're, odds are that,
They'll come
that relationship, will stimulate even more revenue. It's not always that way, but sometimes that is the case. So it's important to one of Jeremy's points earlier is, and Deborah also said, to make it easy for people to transact with you. Because if you don't, then there's not much incentive. And part of that is making sure you understand all of your rights and what you have, right? What you can claim and how you can transact. Because you don't ever want to be in a situation where you whether you inadvertently or hopefully not purposely assign rights that aren't yours away. Because if that happens, that becomes a pain, not just for you, but for the person who you contracted with, and they're not likely to work with you again. So you want to make sure that you're very clear on what you're authorized to transact.
Right, sampling is a tricky area, and I do a lot with samples. And with the bounce music and my rap and hip hop stuff, and also with my clearance agency I work for. And that I cannot have anything that has samples in it that are not clear, because you can't do it. So I have to kind of cut out a lot of Assange things that I'm very strict about that, because I don't want to have to try and deal with somebody else coming back to me. It's done that.
That's part of the reason we had one record label publishing company that owns everything as far as what's allowed to be sold to music supervisors. Because then there's only one person that has to say yes, and you don't have to ask a band or get approval or permission from a number of people, and they like that better, because if they like a song, they want to use it quickly. Usually you're like, there's only one of us that has to say yes, so if we can come to some arrangement, then I'll give you license to that, and we have the authority to do it. Makes it simple.
Yeah, no,
for them.
I love that. And there's some of you in this room that know that I love my work for hires because of that.
Yeah.
Because you can still pay people, we've covered this a couple times today. You're not necessarily cutting out anyone else. You can, it's up to you if you're the owner.
Terrible idea.
Or, and you have control, but when you have a band and you're tight knit and, you're still working together, then again, that doesn't preclude, the rest of them from, enjoying the fruits of that revenue, right? But yeah, it certainly is a lot easier to be able to make the decision to license something rather than, have a big, powwow about it, because, I mean,
Then you lose the opportunity.
you lose
I
opportunity.
see that sync all the time.
We all know what
Clearance
schedules
stuff,
are
if
like.
somebody can't be found because your ASCAP BMI information is not correct, or, your contact information is not there on your Facebook or Instagram, and there's somebody can't find you to clear your share of a song, just always be available.
Going back to, making sure that your data is reconciled, right? And that, that you're maximizing every opportunity you can to earn. How important is it to keep your catalog and your performances up to date with the performance rights organizations?
Oh, very important. What
You-
do you want me to say?
Yeah, you want to have everything in there.
Yeah,
So
I put
what
everything in
happens-
there, even if it's not earning money.
Yeah, so do you as the administrator log every time band performs original works?
Oh, I see what you mean.
That's what I was teeing you up
Okay,
for.
right. So if you're doing a show, this is a kind of an insider thing. If you're doing a gig, if you in your BMI, go ahead and submit your playlist to your BMI rep. You don't have to. There's something called BMI Live, and then there's ASCAP Stage, where after you play a gig, you go on and you log in and you give them your set list. You're supposed to be being paid by the club, by the venue for ASCAP BMI performance royalties, but it's just not a bad idea to just, I have one of my writers who's a Broadway writer, and after every single show, he just sends the stuff to BMI Live. And he's done that forever, and I think he's, brought in more income than he would if he just left it up to the venues. So as far as that goes, just be a little proactive on that.
Yeah, you can just submit a set list really easily.
Yeah,
After a show, just log in on a computer and submit a set list,
yeah.
and eventually that becomes
As far
mailbox money.
as far as new songs, when I get new songs from my artists, I take care of the registrations because I'm the publisher. And I register their shares of the songs with ASCAP and BMI, and I register them around the world. So that's my initial job.
So when you,
Registration fee.
when you were talking about your sub-publisher in Europe earlier, so you're saying that they don't do that, but you do that?
I do it because they're US writers.
Okay.
So the US copyrights. So the SASM and GEMA will take the registration from BMI and ASCAP
Right.
as it exists. And I just notify mine.
Right. Well, I'm strapped to think about any revenue that we haven't fully, and not fully discussed, but that we haven't, is there something obvious that we haven't touched on before we're getting to
Or questions, yeah.
questions? Oh, yeah, we'll do questions, but
Can I just mention the MLC, by the way? The MLC is the collection service that for streaming royalties, everybody should
that's
should
the
have their
thing,
streaming.
that's what I was thinking about earlier.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
because
I lost it.
yeah,
That's what I was gonna ask.
they collect for all the major streaming services.
So what is the MLC? Tell them what the MLC is and what it stands for and why it's there.
Okay, so the MLC, they're based in Nashville. It used to be the Harry Fox Agency, music licensing collective, and it was formed from recent laws that were passed about 5 years ago. You guys can help me on that, but it's the licensing collective agency that came out of laws setting rates for streaming.
Right, so they collect.
Just
um,
streaming,
Yeah, they collect mechanical
mechanical royalties, yeah.
royalties on behalf of the streaming platforms.
Plus, it's a terrific database. It's very easy to use. If your songs are there, somebody's looking for you, you have your information correct there, you'll be found. So the MLC, it's on my thing.
It's very easy to register, so
Yeah.
but it's just for songwriters. Because
Yes, this is publishing.
Because yeah, mechanical royalties only extend to the composition, not to the recording. And they're a relatively new agency, but I still don't know people who are getting royalties, but I know that in the next year that's gonna happen.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, that's good. You did
Yeah.
your job. I don't collect royalties, so.
No, they're good.
But yeah, so go ahead and make sure that you're, registered with them. It's quick and easy. It's totally easy. And, again, I mean, it could amount to mailbox money. If you're getting enough streams, so.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we can open up the floor for questions, because I know that you'll have them. Yes.
When you're talking about like performances and putting your set list like on the ASCAP Live, because I'm with ASCAP. If it's a
Stage, I
past
think it's
show,
called
can I
Stage.
do that?
ASCAP Stage.
ASCAP
If
Stage.
it's a past show, can I still do that, or like Okay, 'cause I've done a lot of shows, and
Yep.
I did not know anything about that.
Yeah.
So-
Plug 'em
You
all in.
can Put them all in
Okay.
there. I don't think there's any
There-
statute of limitations.
Yeah,
about
there's
it.
no cutoff
Just,
date.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm-
We did the same thing when we figured it out too,
okay.
and started to add more and more of it. We still need to get better at it.
So like, it has like the whole range, all of my shows, so.
Yeah.
Go there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Anyone else? Yes.
One of the other revenue sources that I wanted to ask about, I wasn't talking about, was like contracted work, like you're hired to write the score. for
Yeah.
That, and then being able to also keep your rights, or your, performance rights.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I feel like that's something that I've more recently heard, that there are producers that will actually get you to kind of weigh your rights. Can you talk about like how to make sure that you keep those?
So when we were talking about, and I want you to answer this, but from a legal standpoint, when we discussed the work for hires earlier. So we approached that conversation being on the other side of that. So what Jeremy was talking about was that some of the people that he's performing with are they perform with the band under a work for hire, which means their performance is commissioned, and they're going to get paid for the gig, but not for any recording, right? Because the however many people in the LLC, or what, if it's just you or your wife or what have you, whatever the configuration is, as owns the actual content. On the other side of that, you can absolutely, whether you're writing a score for a film or whether you're a session artist and you're in a very similar situation, a good way to look at that from the perspective of the people in this band is that they're getting paid. They're getting paid to do what they love to do. They may not have an interest in the recording, but they're contracted musicians and it's work. So, but it's, that's a real positive way of looking at that. A lot of people who write scores are commissioned under the work for hire doctrine.
But you retain your writer rights, though.
Yes.
Under works for hire, so that's something to think about too, that's important, it's because then if you've written for a film, then you can still get your ASCAP money, performance money, as a writer, even though the work for hire is owned by, Paramount Pictures.
Yeah.
and those
so-
things are all kind of negotiable, I mean, as far as we've
Okay.
interacted with them. Not giving your writer,
But you own the writer.
yeah, and we did a song for a film that's coming out soon. And the arrangement that we made with them is they've got master share or publishing share, and we have writing share.
Right.
And then we split writing share also with one other person that contributed a little bit, but we just kind of sat down and hashed it out. And I know a lot of people that write for film and TV, and they've been able to retain more and more of their rights and more of their value over
That's-
time.
That's pretty standard now, and I definitely don't just sign everything away.
Yeah, I mean, if you.
They're giving you a
if
big check up front.
You only relinquish your rights when you relinquish your rights. So as long as you are the rights holder, you have control. I mean, if you're not sharing, the rights, if you're not a co-author, and there's other obligations that you have, but you, as long as you don't sign your rights away, then you maintain your rights. And so it's just up, you have to determine if you're approached by someone who wants to pay you for commissioned work, whether or not it's worth it. Sometimes it is, because, a lot of, I mean, like John Williams is probably not performing, or creating scores as a work made for hire because he has leverage. But a lot of, people who write scores, a lot of session artists, there's a ton of session artists in the city that don't own any of their recordings they're on. I mean, a ton of them, and they're getting paid a lot to record in their recording studio, and they love it. The vice president of our board, Craig Klein, was just talking to me about this the other day. I mean, he's on countless recordings, and he has been for, some, going on like something like 40 or 50 years. And, you know, that's a huge source of income for him. So, you know, if he's not a member, if he's not in the recording studio as a primary member of one of his bands, and he's doing, you know, a session on behalf of, you know, whether it's, I don't know, some of the former legacy artists or, you know, whoever it might be, you know, if he's just laying a track, then, you know, that's easy money. So it just depends on the nature of the deal, right? That's why you want to make sure that whatever arrangement that you're entering into is fair and equitable and something that you can live with. You want to make sure that, you know, you understand exactly how the scope and nature of the rights around what you're transacting. That's why it's so important to know that, because there are a lot of people who sign their rights away without ever knowing it, and it's just too late by the time, you know, they seek recourse, you know. So that's the biggest thing is, you know, if someone hands you a document, don't sign it without understanding what it means. Sorry, I had to go much. I had to preach.
Yeah, and the help is out there. There's the information is out there. The AIMP website is for publishers. The Copyright Office has great information. Song file, just good rundown of basic terms, mechanical licensing, just things like that. It's out there and it's available just to kind of get general knowledge, but then for specifics, you know,
And it also, it's funny, when we first started diving into this, it all sounds really complicated, and there's all of these different kind of buckets of income that you have to kind of frame for yourself. And then once you start becoming familiar with the terminology,
Sure.
it simplifies pretty well, you know, as far as the differences between how these things are all put together. It's less than it sounds, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a question?
I was gonna ask more so about the PROs, how you make money off of like your PROs and whatnot. So once you apply for a performing rights organization, how exactly do you go about, okay, so this is where, I know with DistroKid, they kind of give you your distribution, like money in like all one account. But for BMI or ASCAP or something like that, how would you go about saying, okay, I'm a writer, I'm a publisher, how do I directly collect this?
sure. So you're already a member as a writer?
Yes.
Okay, then I suggest you register also as a publisher. But then they'll supply you with a portal, username and password, and you just register your songs. Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty simple, and BMI, I think, is much more user-friendly than ASCAP. They're both pretty good now, but they'll set you up. BMI is also a font of information.
Okay.
But yeah, just go under your member username and password and register the songs. And I mean, you've already submitted your W-9 and you're set up for payment, so.
And then they'll either mail you a check,
They'll
or you can
mail
put
you
your
check.
banking information in there, and they'll just do a direct
ACH,
deposit.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
they don't have to do anything extra as long as your songs are registered.
yes, you don't have to do anything, no.
Yep, just every song you ever write, plug it in there under your name.
Make sure it's accurate, make sure the data is
Yeah, spell everything right.
And you do, I mean, if you are performing, that's when you want to go into the BMI Live, the ASCAP stage, and you want to input that data as frequently as you're performing. You don't want to miss out on any income.
I think it's good stuff that you're doing. And putting it together, especially when Ms. Ashlye, when you put it together for a museum, the series you have for musicians.
Oh,
That was
thanks.
great, just to say thank you. Thank y'all for sharing, information. You got musicians out here trying to do things. And, it's hard online with different stuff coming at you. But, the fact that y'all taking up the time, I just want to say thank you. And, I was thinking about a man, he was saying that he must have started that band himself, huh? It was just you. The way you said you put it together, it seemed like, it's easy, but you got a group of guys coming in, they might be jamming, and they start doing stuff, you get a little recognition. And then down the line, you want to try to put it together, in the business sense, it's hard to do.
It is.
Like you were saying, you gave them your merchandise, you gave them, and I like what you said about just because you got ownership, you still can give some revenue to your people, you know, whoever you're working with, stuff like that. And so, I mean, like, the question I have was just, about, I can't think of it, but, it was something that you were talking about, putting it together, being able to talk it out with your band members, and talk it out with your people that write for you and everything like that.
Yeah, when we first started it, we had everybody had ownership. And it was, you know, came from a good place and is idealistic and awesome. And you got people that like are gonna, I don't know, you know, make art with you and commit to you. Yeah, this is maybe 14, 13. Oh no, even before, yeah, absolutely. 04, 03. And, you know, because life changes and things change, most of those people have moved on. And we've had to unwind some of these arrangements, which you can do. Like you said, I think it's really great to reward your people, but also create a flexible enough environment for them to be able to participate in income without it being, you're contractually obligated to tons of people, and just kind of figuring that out.
I guess like you said, you had an LLC for the works, and then you had one for the band and that you travel with.
Yep.
That sounds like a good idea too.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the split sheet. With the split sheet, that's where you sit down with everybody and like, okay, you put this hook in, or, you know, you come and you splitting up, you know, what you contributed to the song. Right?
Yeah.
As far as that goes, that's what you mean when you say the split sheet?
Yeah, and it assigns.
I'll email you one. Send me
Yeah,
an email, I'll email it to you.
it's
A good one.
super simple when you agree on it.
Yeah.
It just assigns income and kind of rights to each member based on, you know, your agreed contribution, and those can be any numbers you want. That makes sense. You go into the portal, like we've got 4 or 5 songs that were co-written with a band member, and we agreed on a portion of the split sheet. Then BMI pays him directly for, you know, for his income portion of that. So yeah.
Send me an email.
Are these sessions archived so we can listen options that we?
The ones where the sound is good will be available. Absolutely.
And that would be on the website?
We'll have it hosted there, and I don't know if the mayor's office is.
Yeah, so we have them hosted on the Music Census Sessions website, so it's just nolamusiccensus.org. We have all the info about this program and the archived videos. But you can also email any of us and we'll make sure you get us.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Good for David Harrison, I have a book called Musicians and Mentors. I teach briefly young lessons here, and I have some students who are on to college and interested in starting other chapters in other states that express you. I could generate some funds so that I could pay them. I'm just getting here now, being the tidbits of the last conversation.
Are you talking about like creating chapters?
Yeah,
Your students are doing this as they go off to college?
the college is where we are.
Oh, so they're branching out what you've started here.
Yes.
It's fantastic. What a legacy.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you know? Very inspiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't think you need any contracts for that. I just, I'm a piano teacher too, so I love that.
But I am interested in offering them some kind of salary. Last year,
I see.
Don't give me 20 grand.
Ah, I
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
I see,
organization.
okay.
Good.
So I'll give you my.
Ashley can help
Yeah.
you with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
About the music supervisors, where would you go to maybe interact with the music supervisors? And I know you're saying the music supervisors is the ones that's coming to you for music to put in movies and TV and radio and things.
Yeah,
Tough one.
they're hard to reach, they're a bit esoteric, and they're really specialized in certain areas of music. And they don't take solicitations or anything like that. So there are certain services where you pay a fee, a portion of the final synchronization fee. Some are very reasonable. I listed one that I have worked with for 4 years. They're called Dawn Patrol. They play some of my jazz music. It's a very reasonable service. There are a lot of them. Some of them come and go. Tracks and Fields is one for foreign placement and advertising. I only put a few of them here because there are a lot of them, but you can go through some of the services, just pay attention to what percentage they're gonna take. And also focus on which of these services works with what music, like New Orleans music, somebody, I think my Dawn Patrol lady, she loves bounce music. She's like, I think she's from here. And she loves New Orleans music. So she's looking for, in fact, your girl, what's her name? Who was before me? She's doing a film.
Oh, Lisa.
Lisa, yeah. Yeah, so certain supervisors and companies specialize in local music here, and some are very focused on New Orleans. So a lot of it is hit and miss. It's very hard to get your music to a music supervisor. And I've been doing it, I've been in the business for 25 years, and still, it's hard to get.
There's something down there, I think it was, New Orleans Film Festival, but it might have been, that we brought music supervisors in,
Right.
musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
there used to be a festival, not a festival, sorry. Well, I think it actually was one year, but, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation used to have a conference called
Sync
Up.
up.
Yeah.
And they had programming around that,
Mhm.
that was beyond the conference that they had
I don't
every
think
year.
they've done that.
But no, I wish they still did it, because that's where I would have told you to go. The second Friday of Jazz Fest, just show up at the
Sure.
foundation, you meet all of them.
Yeah.
Because they all come to
But
town
the
in
other
the same room at the same time, but that's not happening any longer. Maybe that's a good question to ask them.
Mhm.
If they'd like to start that programming back up. See,
Yeah.
there we have it.
The other thing is just to know what films are here. And if there are more local films, major motion pictures, maybe you can walk on set, but if it's somebody you know, just keep your ears open. If it's somebody you know that needs music for something, just dive into that, and give them some music and get paid for it.
The city has a film office, which is, so I'm in the Office of Nighttime Economy, for those of you that don't know, and we're actually on the same floor in Gallier Hall as the film office, and we had a meeting with them yesterday, and their capabilities are fairly limited, but we did kind of talk about some ways that we can collaborate together, and I think that that's a really good topic to bring up with them,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People asking me all the time for New Orleans music, and,
Right.
and I have my own areas, but
Yeah.
I don't know everything.
Right.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I will certainly bring that up, and if anyone would like my contact info to join that conversation, my cards are over there, or come say hi, but I think that's really important.
So we are rappers and we got other artists that are constantly asking for a verse or for us to feature. Would Sound Exchange be how we recruit those after we sign splits with the other artists? I'm not sure if that's like the appropriate kind of.
Yes, if the song is registered with the featured artists with Sound Exchange, all the artists on the song should be with Sound Exchange. Yeah, just go straight to Sound Exchange.
It's after we handle the split sheets.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the benefit of having an LLC, like to retain your revenue versus just using like yourself or your own social freedom or something like that?
So an LLC can be helpful if you are prepared to operate a legal entity. And it's not hard to do, it's not hard to form. The advantages of an LLC is that it reduces your exposure to risk. So as long as you're operating your business, the LLC, and it's separate from your person. And let's say someone sues you for jumping up and down. If they sue you and you were operating as your LLC, I mean, there's some legal maneuvering, but the idea is that the LLC, the person who is asserting claims against you is limited to the interest you have in the LLC and can't come after your personal assets. There are ways around that, but, you know, typically like the LLC, assuming you're doing your business, conducting your business properly, then the LLC shields you, is meant to shield you from liability. And the other benefit, that's often promoted with an LLC is that it's easy to account for with taxes. So you just attach it as a schedule to your annual income tax return. But the thing that you need to know is that, and one of the reasons why Gene and I are very, very, very reluctant to be like, go, you know, start an LLC today, is because, you know, depending on the administration, the IRS, whatever the current practices are, the regulations change insofar as what you can be penalized for if you forget, for instance, to file because you're not really doing any business. So I have clients who form LLCs because the union tells them to, or someone else tells them to, and they don't even know why they're doing it. And they forget about it and they don't file, they don't add it to their personal income tax return. And guess what? The IRS comes knocking on your door. And even if you made zero, you're gonna pay penalties and they're gonna be significant. I had a band 2 years ago who broke up before they got together, basically. And they formed an LLC and there was like 7 of them. And they didn't make anything, they broke up, they didn't even have a gig. And they had this LLC because they were told to do this. And it was just so dumb. And so they forgot about it and they didn't account, you know, for it. And they were charged penalties and interest on $0. And I saw this letter amounting to $12,000. So that should get your attention. That's reason not to form an LLC, okay, if you're not gonna use it, right? If you do have an LLC and you're not using it, dissolve it. Because if it's on the books, that can happen, you know. You just want to make sure that you report. And that's just custom, and that's just customs that change over time. That didn't used to happen. But you never know how the IRS, like how the Internal Revenue Code and the enforcement of it, what, you know, all we have to do is, you know, pick up our phones and go online and look at the news. And we know there's something different happening every day, right? Every hour, there's some new law going into effect right now. And it didn't take Donald Trump being in office for that kind of shit to happen. So, but anything's up for grabs right now. So just make sure you're current on your taxes. That's also a good reason to think twice before you have a whole group of people on your, that is part of your LLC, because I have had band members in the past who, you know, 4 out of 5 of them, you know, file their taxes and claim their interest in the LLC, and one of them doesn't. And then, you know, the penalties and interest get assessed. So it happens. But just make sure you know, you're responsible with it. But it can be beneficial. I have 5. I have an accountant. Get an accountant if you form an LLC, because your accountant, the role of the accountant is to make sure they're saving you enough money so that to justify their fee, right? That's what a good accountant will do. So that's my other recommendation.
One of the other reasons that we formed it, knowing that we have to kind of administratively make sure that we learned how to do this and
Right.
and register with the city all the, you know, once a year, and make sure we're keeping up administratively on all these things, which sounds hard at first, but you kind of get used to it, and it becomes easier and easier and okay. Was having a check written into Bon Bon Vivant LLC causes people to see you as an artist differently. And
That's a really good point.
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird trying to figure out how to navigate a career in some way. Because I think it's really easy for the music business to see individual artists as like, maybe unsupported. And then when I have them email my label, which is called Heroic Doses, the email still comes to me, but their perception of that changes a little bit, and I've dealt with a little more formally. And they assume that I'm a little bit more, I'm gonna be a little bit more intelligent or strict about how I interact with them. Rather than them just approaching us as an artist or my wife specifically, and so. Yeah. Yeah, so it's really nothing, right? I mean, ultimately, it does manage some liability. We file of these things, we have them on purpose. And there's some, you know, legal liability and financial advantages to having them. But also it creates kind of a perception difference with people you work with. As an artist, we found. I don't know if that works for everyone.
I have two, one for my older music and one for my current music, which includes my New Orleans artists, just kind of worked out that way.
I feel like we could do a whole session just on different business structures and the
Oh,
benefits and,
it's unlimited.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great, well, if there's, yeah, one more question?
I know I was set up under one specific artist name. If I were to start a different artist group or work with a band specifically, would it be wise to start a different studio for that new project, or does it cloud it in any way for me to have multiple forms of revenue? Different LLCs for two different entities. That would, if I modeled my business like you, I would have 4 LLCs, right? Because I'm the same person performing, but under a different title. So is there a wiser way to do that?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert.
We'll talk more about that.
You're probably a better expert.
It just, it depends.
Yeah.
You know, you can do that, but I wouldn't.
Right.
You know,
It
it's a lot
seems,
to manage.
right. It would seem unnecessary. The only thing that we wanted to provide was the like creation or intellectual property piece, where you're actually making something or incepting something creatively. And a group of people that could, you know, trip and fall on an airplane and break a leg, that then you could get sued. And we don't want them to be able to sue us personally or sue the assets of the songs themselves. We can kind of contain that, I think, into our band and what our band's income is versus it kind of spilling over into other things. We've, you know, had flat tires on the side of the road and crashed vans into things by accident. And there's a lot of like interesting risks that come with a traveling band. Which is, yeah. But yeah, you should talk about that use case specifically.
We'll talk about it.
You know, before we wrap up, I would love Josh to chat a little bit with y'all about the Crescent City Sounds program that the library administers. I think it goes right in hand with some of the things we discussed today, and it's a really cool initiative.
So yeah, my name's Josh. The library. I run Crescent City Sounds. It is our all local, all free to listen to music streaming service that we offer through the library. We have musicians. That's the important thing. And why I want to talk to you now is in relation to this and everything. We don't pay a whole lot of money, but we do a little better than Spotify. So we get our music by once a year. We have a open submission round. People send us a track. We put together a team of people that curate the music. We make our selections and we offer spots on the collection. If we offer you a spot, we give you a 5-year non-exclusive license that allows us to stream your music. You retain all of your rights and everything. And in return for that, we pay you, at the moment this year, it's going to be a $250 honorary for that 5-year period. It's a one-time check, but you know, we don't have to, you don't need 20,000 spins to get that check. So, this year, our submission round is going to open in September. It will run for 6 weeks. It opens on September 2nd. So please keep an eye, send us music, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, well, if we pick you, we'll pay you and we'll make your music available. We do our best to promote the collection and in return promote everybody that's on the collection. We're trying to ramp up more music programming, more things like that. But it's really important to us to try to give working musicians in this town a little leg up.
That's great, really great.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I'll be at the back room this gallery. I've got some swag, got some flyers. Do I talk a little more? I can explain a little more. But we would love to hear your music.
And there any like, rating for the type of song?
No, no. We don't believe in censorship. The only thing that we bounce out is anything that's hate speech. Otherwise, we take that.
Love it. Thank you. And thank you so much to our speakers. This was really informative. I was learning something. Definitely like a lot. I hope to see you all tomorrow at our bar from 4 to 6 for our happy hour. And after that, you know, we'll see you this summer. But like I keep saying, you know, reach out anytime. Would love to chat, would love to hear from y'all, would love to just talk about music. So thank you all so much.